Hello, my friends. Welcome. My name is Joe. This is the Joe Martino Show. And today we're going to talk about what is counseling and what is it not. Actually, that's not even accurate. We're mostly just going to talk about what it's not. Right now, there seems to be this crazy run of people coming after counseling saying, it's just ruminating on your problems and that doesn't help anyone. And yes, I use that voice often throughout this episode. Let's kick it off. This is the Joe Martino Show.
You're listening to The Joe Martino Show, a podcast dealing with all things emotional, relational, and human nature. Joe is a licensed counselor in the state of Michigan, specializing in relationship therapy. He is also the author of the book, The Emotionally Secure Couple. All advice offered in this episode is offered for entertainment and educational purposes only. Enjoy the show.
Hey friends, welcome. I hope today's going well for you. I want to just jump right into it today. I want to talk about something that we need to talk about when it comes to counseling. I hear this a lot. I'm starting to hear it a lot. Certainly, I've been saying to my friends for years that conservatives were going to start coming for counseling because by and large, the counseling field tends to be liberal. It tends to be pretty left. And if we're really honest, our outcomes fluctuate, right? There are things, there are different strategy methods in counseling that work better than others. Research shows that. I think that's true of everything. We have a lot of educational systems jumping into the counseling fray, which can be helpful, but also brings trouble. And one of the ways, and it's starting to happen, conservatives are coming for them. There's a woman, I did a book review on her. There's people, they've gone on everything from the Joe Rogan experience, which is, I'm not sure where he is politically, to, some more conservative places. And even some of the liberal podcasts have really come after counseling. And what they do is they talk about rumination. Does rumination help in therapy? I hear it all the time. It kind of drives me crazy. Does rumination help in therapy? Why do we just ruminate? If all you're going to do is ruminate, that's not going to be helpful. And I don't disagree necessarily, but I do want to talk about what is therapy and why doesn't rumination just work, right? And so ruminate, according to the dictionary, think deeply about something. And so depending on who you listen to, depending on the podcast you listen to, the book you read, there are a lot of people who are like, oh, the only thing that happens when you go to counseling is they sit there and they get you to start thinking about whatever it is that's going on in your life, and you just ruminate on the problem, and what in your life has ever gotten better by ruminating on the problem? Nothing. This is all part of the agenda to blah, blah, blah. And all you need to do is just grab your bootstraps and pull yourself up and get your stuff together. Yeah, and we're just going to ruminate on the problem. Okay, if you go to a therapist that you only ruminate on your problems, I actually agree with them. You should get a new therapist, right? Ruminating is halfway home. It's like putting the good butter in your frying pan to make vegetables, right? To make some good sauteed green beans, you need some good oil or some good butter, and you need it in the frying pan. That's what rumination is to therapy. You have to talk about some of the problems. You have to consider them. You have to consider what's going on in your life. And because the thing of it is there is power in having someone to talk to about that. Well, that's why we have our friends. This is why we've lost friends in society. And it's just insanity to me, and I'm just tired of it. I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm tired of it. Rumination alone is not therapy. Now, I want to be clear. Do I think that there are therapists out there that for whatever reason, that's probably all they do? Sure. There's probably even some that would argue with me that there is value in that and that we could find research that would suggest that. I'm not in that camp, and if I'm not being recorded, I'm happy to have that discussion with anyone who wants to have it. But the fact that there are therapists that do that, I also know a lot of therapists that don't just ruminate. It's not just about ruminating on the problem. It's not just about talking through whatever your problems are or thinking about whatever your problems are. It is also about coming up with solutions, coming up with things you can try, going after the story in your head. If you want to go back and listen to episode 287, I think that's going to be the episode for it. right? You can go back and listen to those. The reality is that if you're just going for rumination, it's probably not going to help. But people who are coming for therapy, you need to at least be intellectually honest and talk about the reality that that's very few and far between in therapy. That's not a lot of therapists. Now, is that people that want to play at therapy? Maybe, right? And there are people that do that. I see life coaches, I see religious people, and they're like a counselor. Life coaches, they say, "Oh, I'm like a counselor." No, you're really not. And there might be a place for a life coach. There's certainly a place for business coaching. I get all of that. Spiritual counselors who get no training, y'all make me nervous. I'm not going to lie. I don't understand it at all. In part because I know how a lot of you live your lives, right? And yeah, I'm talking about men's ministry and women's ministries and those types of things. I tell people this all the time. If you're going to someone who their only expertise is how they're living their life, make sure you know how they're living their life. Right? So if you're going to a men's ministry, what kind of husband was that guy? What kind of father was he? Do his kids, when they become adults, do they stay in the faith? Do they live out his stated values? Because if they don't, why are you following him? If you're a woman and you're going to a women's ministry, it's the same questions. What kind of wife is she? Do you want to be that kind of wife? What kind of mother is she? Do you want to be that kind of mother? What are her kids like? Especially her adult kids. And when you're going to a therapist, the difference is their qualifications should be more than just how they live their lives. Right? They should actually have some training in how the brain works, how we work, how we create meaning, and all of those things. There's another danger for our field, and that is we're not a completely hard science. And I'm afraid that because of these criticisms, rather than just saying bug off, like we're not going to change because you're like, oh, rumination. Rumination has a value. It has a place. But I'm afraid that what's happening is there's too many of us. We're trying to make our field a hard science. And that's not going to work either, because we can't make something that's not a hard science a hard science. And so I just tell people, look, this isn't a hard science. I can't take a blood test and be like, oh, that's what's wrong with you. But you can tell me about your behaviors. I can tell you about the world that you're getting from those behaviors. And we can say, is this the world that you want to live in? Is this the life that you want to create for yourself? And we can come up with new behaviors for you to try. We can come up with new strategies for you to move forward. That is the heart and essence of counseling. We help people change. So then we have to start looking at, okay, well, how does rumination work, right? How does that fit into change? The first thing you do is you ruminate. That's the very first step. We want to ruminate. We want to spend some time thinking in our minds, deeply and repetitively, about our life. In fact, I spend a lot of time inside my head thinking about my life, thinking about how the world I live in is different than the world I thought I was going to live in both good and bad ways. I spend a lot of time inside my head thinking about my family and behaviors that I've done and they've done and things I could have done better. And it's good because rumination doesn't stop there. We don't want to stop at rumination. We want to move to reflection. And we want to start asking ourselves some common questions. If you're a longtime listener to this show, these are going to be some common questions. But we want to reflect on why we're doing what we're doing. We want to reflect on what we thought what we were doing would get us versus what it is getting us. What was the result that we were hoping for versus the result that we got? What are things that I controlled in the creation of this in order for me to live in this world that I have? I was at a conference recently where a guy said something to the effect of, if the solution to your problem involves an external character, you're not in control. And that's part of the rumination plus reflection that helps us to move forward and to facilitate change and growth. What is the aspect of your life that you need to change? What's the part of your life that you would like to see be different? So we ruminate and then we reflect. After we've ruminated and reflected, then we spend time reallocating or allocating or planning. I was trying to go for an R word there. That's why I went with reallocating, right? But what we want to do is we want to create a system where we do spend time. We think about what's going on in our lives, and we're going to ruminate on it. We're going to think about it. We're going to ruminate on the things that we grieve. We're going to ruminate on the things that are hard and the things that are painful for us. And it'll be okay. It'll be good for us to ruminate on those things. It will be good for us to spend time reflecting on them. It will be good for us to reflect on what we own in that. It will be good for us to reflect on what we have no control over in that. And then it will be good for us to come up with a plan for what we're going to do to go forward differently, to do things differently, to move forward differently. Because that's where healing comes from. That's where things happen that bring change. That's where health is. Now, if all you do is sit around and ruminate, you're stuck. And certainly that is kind of the definition of anxiety and depression, right? You're stuck in a loop where all you can think about is what's going on bad or what could go bad. And there are counselors that probably engage in that. But I'm telling you, it is few and far between because they don't stay busy, right? They certainly are not in private practice long because people don't typically want to come to them. Which brings me to my last thing for today. Another thing that I'm hearing a lot, especially on the conservative podcasts, are, the therapist, their model is for you to come forever because if you don't come, they don't get paid. Look, I don't know what's going on with other therapists, but I will tell you in my office, I'm running a wait list all the time. I'm trying to get people through as quick as I can and be helpful to them at the same time. I do not have this method of, my business model is just keep them coming forever. Just keep them coming every week, create new problems. I mean, we joke about that. Sean Achor in his Happiness TED Talk, if you watch that, he makes some joke along those lines. And he's a funny dude. He's a very funny dude. However, this idea that, we can just discount therapy and just get rid of it all, it's insane. Now, look, are there things going on in therapy that I think we need to talk deeply about? There absolutely are. There are things in going on in therapy, and especially in therapy-adjacent fields, right? Where, like in the state of Pennsylvania, even if you're a licensed counselor, you can't see kids at school unless you have some sort of praxis portion of your license added to it. And what happens is it's really two different types of therapy. In-school counseling and out-of-school counseling are two different things. And the danger there is relatively something we need to talk about, right? But this idea that counselors just want you to show up and they only want you to think about your problems because then your problems don't ever get better. And your problems don't ever get better. Then you stay with them because if you actually do get better, they go out of business. That's insanity. Good therapists that help people are busy. Good therapists that bring help and healing to people are busy. Because what happens is one person says to their friend, hey, you should go see this guy, this woman. They helped us a lot. Somebody else says it. That's advertising that a good therapist can't buy. You can't buy it. And so the idea that, they just want you to keep coming, that's stupid. It's inaccurate. Now, are there people that maybe do that? Sure, but not many. And again, we need to have the hard conversations. If you know me, you know I'm not afraid of the hard conversations. I want to have hard conversations with people. I want people to have hard conversations with me, and I want to have them about issues that matter to me. Let's talk about bed sharing and why I think it's best. Let's talk about spanking and why I think you should stop if you're doing it. Let's talk about school choices. Let's talk about how we school, how we educate. Let's talk about what it means to be depressed. Let's talk about what it means to be offensive. Let's talk about microaggressions. Let's talk about non-microaggressions. There's very few things I won't have a conversation with someone about. We can talk about counseling. We can talk about religion. But we have to talk about it in honest terms. A few weeks ago, I did an episode on book bans. And one of the things that drives me nuts is that's a dishonest term. Nobody's banning books. They're removing them from school libraries. Now, if they can get them from school libraries and community libraries, maybe that's a ban. Book challenge, I'm there for that. That's a great conversation. And I'm not afraid of hard conversations. But if we're going to have a hard conversation about counseling, we need to make sure that it's accurate. And counselors don't want you to just sit there and stare at your problems. And the proofs, even like in the books that are being written about this, they cherry pick from people that are counseling adjacent or very small sample sizes. And by and large, sample sizes show that counseling helps people. So, I mean, we're talking big sample sizes. Counseling helps people. So I'm okay having the conversation. I'm okay if we just have a conversation about, hey, what's working in counseling, what isn't. What are things where maybe counseling's gone off the track? They've lost the plot a little bit. How is counseling? Here's a conversation I'd love to have. How is counseling engaged in cancel culture of people that A, disagree with it, or B, disagree with how it should be done? Because I do think a lot of our social conversations that are either taboo or not going very well, the conversations aren't going well, have started in our school systems. And a lot of times have been driven by people who either felt they were counselors because they work with kids a lot and so they're qualified to make decisions, or they're counseling adjacent and so they think they can have those conversations. And to be honest with you, I would be okay. Like, that'd be a good conversation to have. We should have that conversation. Hard conversations are fine. We just need to make sure that they're couched in honesty. And we don't want to skew. And I'm not even saying that these people are lying. I am saying that they're skewing things to make their point a little bit better. And that bugs me. And I wanted to address it today. All right. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please share with a friend. And hey, give us that rating in your podcast store. Until next time.